All right, everyone. Welcome to the Sprint 28 end of sprint demo. Next slide. All right, I'll start with some sprint statistics. We'll move on to Greg on providers, Dan on the user interface. Madhu will talk about automate and provider event filters. Alberto will talk about some of the REST API changes that have been made. Greg will talk about a lot of the appliance core stuff that we've done, and Rich will finish off with SmartState leasing. Next, please. We had a lot of pull requests merged this sprint, 246. I think that's the highest ever. As you can see, a lot of bug fixes and enhancements have come in. There was a lot of work on gem updates as well. As you can see at the bottom, there's 24 pull requests labeled as gem changes. I think Greg will get into that when he talks about appliance stuff. Next slide, please. Gymnasium has been acting kind of strange. It keeps flittering between two numbers, and we don't know why. If you look at the last sprint, it was like 120 green gems, and now it's 159. So we're trying to understand where this number keeps flipping around from. But we still have a lot more gems that we want to upgrade, but we're moving along. The other thing that was added this sprint was support for coveralls, which is code coverage. The link there, you can take a look at it. Right now, it's saying we're 48% covered, but that's not entirely accurate. We do know that there are files that are not covered at all, and if you don't cover it, it doesn't count it in the coverage calculations. So once we add those in, I'm sure the number will drop a bit. We've also noticed some oddities with it kind of going up and down, and we're trying to figure that out. So next slide, please. Over to Greg.
All right, so I have a few things to talk about this sprint for providers. The provider namespacing effort is continued this sprint with namespacing OpenStack and the containers providers. And just kind of as a reminder, like why we're doing this, you might remember Matthew Draper's bit in the demo from last sprint, where he showed what he's actually doing to the code as he's namespacing these. The goal is to group all these providers' code together instead of kind of being arbitrarily scattered around the code base. This is actually proving itself out. We've had different people from the community looking at the code, and they're able to grok how a provider is supported by ManageIQ much more quickly than we saw before. And our provider integrations never stop. We're currently underway with adding Azure support. Brona and Dan B created the baseline models for this during the sprint, and currently working on adding inventory refresh as well as VM Power Ops. VM Power Operations, I should say it all the way, I guess. On the containers front, we've had another important cross-link. We can now determine that Kubernetes nodes, or a Kubernetes node, is actually a Rev VM. This is just another step down that path of kind of linking all the things. This long-term vision here is to be able to have a holistic picture of an environment from storage and networking, like all the way up to applications running on containers. So I think this is really good. This is really a good step down that path. On the OpenStack side, we've had actually a couple things going on. The first one is more user-facing. It's adding support for shelving instances in OpenStack. And shelving an instance is sort of like shutting down an instance, with this added option to remove it from the hypervisor at some later time if you want. So you can kind of, you can try to shut it down and think, well, maybe, in a week, if I don't use it again, go ahead and kill it. I should point out, for those who don't know, this is actually functionality supported natively by OpenStack, and we're really just surfacing it. So the second piece that's being worked on for OpenStack is Ladislav is reworking our entire development test framework for OpenStack. This is something we've been kind of needing for a long time, and even though it's still in the works, what I've seen so far has been really great. Looking forward to that getting in. That would really help out with our kind of turnaround time with getting OpenStack changes tested. So those are the highlights from the provider space for Sprint 28. Over to Dan C to talk about changes in the UI sprint, or the UI this sprint.
Thanks, Greg. All right, so we had 106 UI PRs merged. 33 of those were bugs, 44 enhancements, and then some, refactoring and stuff like that was going on as well. As far as what we've added, the orchestration stacks, we've added the retirement, and we made that Angular, as we're doing with everything we're adding and changing now. That was a shared code, so we did all the retirement screens are now converted to Angular. That's good news. Marching on and replacing the DHLMX libraries. So we've got rid of the menus and replaced those with the Bootstrap Patternfly menus. So in the charts, when you pop up a menu to drill into the charts, you'll see those. Post editor was converted to Angular. That was like our last prototype. We did a few prototypes to try to work out all the different features and things we're going to try to work into Angular. So now we've got those pretty well ironed out, and we know what we're putting into those editors. And we're going to move on now with almost all the forms in the product will be converted to Angular. We've added the tenants to access control. So the project for tenancy is now visible actually inside the UI. You can create tenants and stuff, and I've got a couple screenshots, but they don't really do anything yet. They don't control what anybody sees yet or what everybody can do yet, but they will in the future. With some help from our folks at Booz Allen, actually working in partnership with them. We've got the first cut of the self-service UI. The initial PR was merged, and it's basically the layouts, but I've got some screenshots to show what we got here. So next slide, please. Just the Angular host editor, just kind of showing you, we pretty much made everything Patternfly. It's the wide entry fields and everything. Everything's scrolling down the error messages on each field for what you need to do, things like that. So you're gonna see that proliferate throughout the product. Next. So as far as the tenants, if you get into the configuration area in the access control, right where you have users, roles, and groups, and you'll now see tenants. There's a top level tenant that's always there. My company, that really is for compatibility with people who really don't want to use tenancy. They'll just all fall into the top level. But then you can create tenants and subtenants within there, as well as you can see the different icon down there for projects. So next slide. So when you go onto a tenant screen or project screen, you'll see a summary, and you can see their name and description. It'll tell you what the parent is. Also, you can assign groups into the tenants. That's how you would get users into the different tenants, is you would assign multiple groups in there. And then you can see the tenants and the projects within there. Really, the difference between a project and a tenant is that the project cannot have any children. So it's a kind of a leaf node in the tree for sure. You cannot add any children to it. Next. The full configuration of what you can do to it currently. There'll be more actions and buttons that you'll be able to use against tenants. One of which I can say is right now is probably coming soon is the ability to adjust quotas per tenant. So we'll have probably a button for that, so you can adjust the quotas. Next. So I mentioned the self-service UI. This is how it would look on a desktop, and actually this is live code. If you can get it running in the product, you can see this. And basically, we've got the layout all laid out with the navigation on the left, the headers. That is real data coming back. Notice that the tiles are not like filled in with any kind of graphics or anything. That's ongoing work. So this will be improved as we go along here, next few sprints. Next. On a tablet, the left-hand navigation will shrink down, so you have more room to work, and basically the same data presented. And next slide. When it gets really small, the navigation really just folds all up into that top left, what they call hamburger menu. And when you click on that, the menus will pop open, and you'll be able to still navigate even on a small screen. So we're designing this for various different size screens. And that's the UI.
Okay, Madhu. So we have actually added the ability to filter out services from a composite service. A composite service typically would actually have one or more services underneath it, and at runtime, we need a feature, an optional feature that would allow you to remove some of these services. And the advantage of doing it with using an automate method is that you don't create unnecessary tasks which actually need to be discarded or thrown out. For backward compatibility, we have actually made sure that all services get included. None of them, the filtering doesn't happen. Next slide, please. So this is actually an example on the top of a service dialog where you have an environment which consists of a production service, a QA service, and a test service. And at runtime, based on whatever the user selects, if he selects production, we want to give them the production service. If he selects QA, we want to give them the QA service. So once a user has made a selection, there is an automate method called filter by dialog parameters, which you see on the right-hand side bottom, that is actually invoked, and it sets up the flag in the root object saying include the service. And only that service would be included in the task and nothing else would get in. Previously, in order to do this, you had to go through a lot of, hoops to get the thing in, put assertions and stuff like that. All of that has been eliminated by using this approach. Next slide, please. So by default, like I said, all services get included. And the method that is being used to filter out services has been commented out, so it does not get run. So if you need to use it in your environment, you actually have to comment out the method, the service filter method, which you see at the very bottom. And you need to copy this instance out to your domain, make the changes, and filter out the services. That's it for the service filtering stuff. Next slide, please. As far as the event filters goes, we are working on the event switchboard, and we're trying to get as many things into the database. And one of the things that we have moved this sprint into the database is the blacklisting of events. This is just a start. I think right now you cannot edit it from the UI, but down the road we'll be able to edit this from the UI, and also with the provider changes coming along, the providers actually have default blacklist things defined in each of the providers. Even that would be exposed through the UI. That's it. Next slide.
All right. So on the REST API front, Tim has been pretty busy. So let's see, a couple of things come in. In this sprint, we have chargeback rates CRUD was added, so we can create the rates via /API rates, update them, either puts or posts, as well as delete them. So next slide, please. Alrighty. So last sprint we added the ability to query reports and report results. In this sprint, we added the ability to run the report. So essentially, it's opposed to the particular report, API reports ID, action 1, and here's a sample response where it gives you URLs, hrefs to the results, the task for the report to run, and all that fun stuff. So, and as before, you can query the reports, the report results, as you see on the bottom. API results, API reports, ID, and the results, all of them, or a particular one, result ID there. And that's it for that. Next slide, please. Yeah, we also merged Patrick's PR on the user roles CRUD. So with this now we can create, update and delete user roles. As you see on the top, we also expose the features that are available to assign to roles. So that's with the /API features primary collection. So as you can see, the queries, you can query the roles or individual features of the role and all that. And that's it for REST API, I believe. Next slide, please.
Hey, Greg.
Okay. So we've updated the appliance from Postgres on the appliance from 9.2 to 9.4. So now the nightly builds have 9.4 on it. The application will still run on 9.2. A lot of work, a lot of changes LJ had to make to get that going. And I think it's also in a better position when we have to upgrade again, the way he worked the code internally. Also on the appliance side, we've clouded it. There were a couple issues that were preventing us from putting that in. Those have been addressed. Nick did a bunch of background research, got that stuff working, got some help from Joe V and LJ as well on that one. And then also Nick worked on changing the file system on the appliance from ext4 to XS. And now we're aligned better with CentOS. That's the default file system there. And as you can see, it scales up to a lot of space. Yes.
Has the service name changed for Postgres?
Yes. It has changed.
Scheiße. All right. So all the SCL enables that are in place will not have to be updated.
Yes, yeah, the software collection name changed.
Although I think you have if you require, or if you source in Etsy, like Etsy init Postgres, we basically created a script that does that. So if you use that instead and source that in, then it'll get the right name regardless of if it changes in the future.
Okay, I'll talk with you later.
Yep.
Okay. All right, next slide, please. So as Jason mentioned, we updated a bunch of gems. So that's on the latest version of all these listed here. And that puts us in a better position if there are security issues that come up and we're on the latest version of gems. It's easier for us to upgrade and dealing with dependencies and things like that. So we're going to keep working on those. There's more to come. And then also there's work being done on tenancy in the back end to support all this stuff that's being added to the UI. That will be ongoing. We'll be working on that through the next couple of sprints. And that's about it for the appliance. Next slide.
Alberto?
Yeah. So for this round, we've extended the external authentications that we support. So in this sprint, we have basically added support for Active Directory as well as LDAP as an external authentication. So there were some changes in the appliance required packages, minor fixes to be able to support those. So for Active Directory, we allow the user to log in our web UI, the admin UI, with their Active Directory credentials, as well as Kerberos SSO, which is a first here. And LDAP is external auth. So again, the configuration right now is all manual. We'll try to automate some of that later with Appliance Console. So right now it's SSSD and Apache configuration manually. We have some documentation listed there. I have a small demo I could show the Active Directory. So if I could share, I can share the screen here.
Go for it.
Stop. Maybe stop sharing. Okay.
No, you can just take. I think you can just take over. Okay. Maybe.
One twice.
I don't know.
Yeah, a little sluggish.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Oh, it did? Sorry. Okay. All right. Alrighty. So this first thing here, I'm going to, this is already configured, so I'm going to the appliance. And alrighty, so we're, okay. So showing here that we have joined the Active Directory with the new realm command, showing here the Active Directory domain. And yeah, the server software here shown is Active Directory. Very slow network. This is ahead.
Oh, you're ahead locally?
Yeah.
There it goes.
Okay.
Went into
and
the appliance.
Here with the Appliance Console showing the external auth, showing the Active Directory domain. So off to the web login. Here, the web admin login.
behind, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it's behind. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Essentially showing the external authentication here being external HTTPD. We've enabled the SSO and getting the user groups, and showing here there's no users other than the administrator. So, okay, and making sure I don't have a Kerberos tickets here. Okay, so we go back to the web admin, logging in.
Maybe.
There we go. With the Active Directory credentials. That's here.
Maybe.
Yeah.
He has it logged in there.
Yeah, network lag. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ta-da!
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the finished product.
The video's probably already done on his side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost.
Pretty much. He's gonna log out and get that same screen. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know
Actually,
what's going
that's
on. Yeah, it's almost done.
I don't know if everyone's seen it that way, but maybe it's even the one we have protected.
I don't know.
Maybe.
We still see the login screen. We still see the login screen. Yeah.
It looks like it got stuck.
Yeah, I don't think it's slow. I think it's just hung.
I could stop sharing and reshare maybe?
I think we get the idea. It logged in.
You wouldn't have made the video where it didn't log in.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. Got to do that.
For extra security, it won't show you the login process.
That's right.
You'll be faster now.
Nope.
No.
No, it's still hanging.
Yeah. Was there much more after it logged
Well, I
in?
was doing the KNet
Mm-hmm.
on the appliance, and then just refresh the web login screen.
You're just
And
in.
the SSO with ID ticket. So
There it goes.
Ooh, nice.
Maybe.
that's the,
That's login we're waiting for.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, I think we got the idea.
Yeah, so that's it.
Okay. Chris, you want to share the slides again? I see we have a couple questions in the chat. I think we'll get to them at the end. All right, next slide, please. Over to Rich.
Have to follow that, huh?
Yeah. Good luck.
See if you can. All right, so a big chunk of the work that we've been doing is kind of non-feature related, but it's structural, and it really will enable maintenance and bug fixing and the addition of features going forward. Essentially, we've refactored the middle layer of the fleecing stack. In the past, there was much provider-specific code interspersed throughout the code path with conditional statements, and it was really pretty messy. And every time you needed to fix something, you had to look through a number of files, and every time you had to add a provider or a feature, you had to consider all of that. So the goal here was really to centralize a lot of the provider-specific code at the lowest possible level, and then clean up the code such that as much of the code will be common and shareable between providers as possible. The number of initial benefits is, from a developer standpoint, the code is easy to read and understand. As I mentioned, the modularity facilitates maintenance and bug fixing. The new code is more extensible, and features is more straightforward, and most of the provider-specific issues are really pushed down into a small area that's specific to the provider. and on the other side, more pluggable in that when we need to add providers, we don't have to put conditional statements throughout the code in unobvious places. Here, this is still a work in progress based on some of the initial work with the container folks. We are doing some additional refactoring to make some of the code even more common, say, so they can consume it. And the goal there is to make as much of it common as possible to make it easier for newer providers to add this feature. Okay, next slide. All right, we have pull requests that are in flight. Two main ones is support for VMware VDDK version 6. We've encountered this in the field, I believe, and it's been failing. And implementing support for this has not been that straightforward, given that the version 6 interface has tighter restrictions on security and requiring thumbprints and things like that. We now had to acquire and pass to the open calls and the connect calls. So, and doing that is not an obvious recipe to follow.
Rich, just wanted to add here, the backend library that we use, the gem, the FFI gem, that has been merged.
Right.
So that made it into the sprint. The changes on the ManageIQ side are still in flight.
Right. To Jason's point, there are two parts of this. There's the VDDK FFI gem, the general gem that we spun off and we support. That has been updated and is merged and is available. This specific pull request is our usage of that gem and how it is incorporated into MIQ. Some other fixes were primarily related to revm fleecing. A number of these problems kind of initiated the refactoring because fixing some of these would have been next to impossible to implement without restructuring the code. The revm 3.5 issues we've encountered where on their side the OVF file is no longer on the NFS share where we expect to find it. We now get all the metadata through the API, so that's not an issue. The permission problem was interesting. Given the backend NAS storage, you could configure your NAS storage to recognize your host and accept root connections. So as root, you can access the storage, but if you don't do that and you log in as root, you have to be the user ID of the files to access them. So say on a NetApp filer, given that they didn't know our appliance, even though we were root, we couldn't access the storage. So here we had to actually change the effective user ID while we were opening the files to be able to access that. Now, of course, given running in the appliance, you can't not be root for a long period of time because most of the things we do require us to be root. So here again, the refactoring came into place where we were able to wrap just the open of the disks in the change of user ID to not impact the other operations of the appliance. There were also, in the past, given clusters, I think in Rev could either be all NFS or all Fiber Channel or iSCSI, and now they can be mixed, which caused some confusion on our end, given that the code kind of assumed one or the other. That has now been fixed, and mixed environments we should be able to support going forward. And that's it. Next slide.
And I think that's it. So I know we have a bunch of questions in the chat. Let's start with those, and then we'll go to any ones on the call. Joe, I can't read it from here. Can you read them?
Are you using the Kerberos gem underneath?
That's for Alberto.
Responded already.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Done outside the Rails app, so.
No, all done outside the Rails app. Okay. Any other questions in there? All right. Does anybody on the phone have any other questions? All right. Thanks, everybody. It's a good demo, good stuff, and we'll see you in 3 weeks.
All right.
Thanks.